Hey guys, this is adding and subtracting fractions part 2. I'm just doing a second video here because there was a lot of confusion about subtraction with regrouping of fractions today during the lesson, and so I thought I'd go over a couple more examples so that hopefully by the end of this you guys will have a pretty good handle on it. Again, this is review, but you know, if you're still not understanding how to do this, then come see me during recess and we can work on it a little bit more together. Okay, so when I add or subtract with fractions, again, I need to have a common denominator. Okay, so that's the first thing I'm going to do when I'm setting up my problem to actually do the subtraction. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. Let's find a common denominator between 1/3 and 2/7. So we're going to multiply this top fraction, the 1/3. I think that the lowest common denominator that we're going to be able to find is going to be 21st. So we're going to multiply this top guy by 7/7 and the bottom guy by 3/3. And that's going to give us two common denominators of 21st. And so our problem becomes 42 and 7/21 minus 17 and 6/21. Okay, so now we're set up. So we've got a larger numerator in our minuend and a smaller numerator down here in my subtrahend. And by the way, you guys, minuend and subtrahend are math words for minuend is the number that you're going to subtract from, and subtrahend is the number that you're actually subtracting. So it doesn't look like I need to do any further regrouping here because I've got a larger fraction up here. So let's just do that. So let's deal with our fraction first. We're going to subtract 6 from 7, and we're going to get 1/21. And now let's deal with our numbers. So we're going to need to regroup over here, make that into a 12. 12 minus 7 is 5, and 3 minus 1 is 2. And my answer is 25 and 1/21. Okay, so that one was fairly easy. We're going to do two that are kind of not easy next. So let's go on and do those. Okay, now I have 40 and 1/7 minus 17 and 1/2. Okay, so my first step is to make these fractions have a common denominator. And I think that the lowest common denominator is going to be 14, which is 7 times 2. That's an easy way you can find it, is just, you know, multiply those denominators by each other, and that'll give you at least a multiple of both, but it might not be the lowest one. In this case it is, though. So I'm going to multiply this top fraction by 2/2. And I'm going to multiply this bottom fraction by 7/7. So that gives me, up here in the minuend, I'm going to have 40 and 2/14. And down in here in my subtrahend, I'm going to have 17 and 7/14. Okay, you can see why I picked this problem now, because it's going to be harder than the last one, isn't it? Because even though this number up here in my minuend is greater, of course, than this number, so, you know, obviously 40 is a lot more than 17, when I look at my fractions now, I have to regroup so that I can take 7 away from some fraction up here. Okay, so I'm going to regroup my minuend. I'm going to take 1 whole out of 40, so that's going to give me 39. Now, since I'm working in 14ths, I'm going to make that whole in 14ths, and I'm going to write it as 14/14. All right, now, hopefully we all still recognize that as just 1, so that 14/14 is that 1 that I took away from 40, okay? And then I still need to have my 2/14 in there, so we're going to write it like that. And then I just keep my 17 and 17/14 down here. I don't need to do anything with that guy. Extend that line down there. Okay, now I'm going to combine that fraction in my minuend. So I've got 39, and let's see, 14 plus 2 is 16/14. Keep my subtrahend the same, so 17 and 7/14. And now I'm ready to do some subtraction. So I can take 7 away from 16, so I'll do that down here. 16 minus 7 is 9. I keep my denominator, so 9/14. and I'll subtract 7 from 9 and the 1's there, and I get 2. And I'll subtract the 10's now, and I'm going to subtract 3 minus 1, and I get 2. And my answer is 22 and 9/14. All right, so you can see you might need a lot of room to work some of these problems, and that's okay. So add a piece of paper if you need to. But let's go ahead and do one more really quick. Okay, here we have 75.5 minus 32 3/4. So the first thing we're going to do is make a common denominator, and all we have to do is multiply that top fraction by 2 over 2. Since it's a factor of 4, we'll just bring that up to 4. So up here I'm going to have 75 and 2/4 minus 32 and 3/4. And I've got the same problem here that I had in my last problem where I have a larger number, of course, in my minuend, but I have a smaller fraction. I'm just trying to make these numbers a little bit clearer since my pen kind of freaked out. So I have a smaller fraction up here, okay? So we need to regroup the minuend again. So let's do that. So now we're going to pull 1 whole out of 75. So that's going to give us 74. My 1 whole is right there with the 4 over 4. And I still have that 2/4 fraction I need to make sure I record. Okay, again, this 4/4 comes from taking 1 whole out of 75, and I'm keeping it in fourths since I'm working in fourths for the rest of the problem. Down here, our subtrahend stays the same, still 32 3/4. Okay, so let's rewrite this problem one more time. I'm going to add those two fractions right here and here. So I get 74 6/4 minus 32 3/4. And now I'm ready to subtract. So I'm going to subtract 3 from 6, and I'll get 3/4. Remember, I don't subtract my denominators. That's silly. We just don't do that. I showed you why at the start of the last video. And then 4 minus 2 is going to be 2. 7 minus 3 is 4. And I end up with 42 3/4. Okay, hopefully those additional sample problems helped you out a little bit for the homework tonight. And we're just going to keep moving on. So we'll keep doing subtraction and addition as we go through this unit, but we're not going to spend any more time learning these because, again, these are review. So if you need to take charge over your own learning and do a little additional review on your own, I would recommend doing a little bit of review on Khan Academy or coming to me and asking for some review worksheets. All right, have a good evening.